Yeah.
Good afternoon, everybody. I think we're gonna get started. And also, I don't know why I have a microphone because I'm the loudest human being I know, but that's fine. They want me to have a mic. So, hey, I'm Sarah Booher. I'm a 2016 DSOL graduate. I did personal injury for 7 years, and in January decided to become an administrative judge for the Department of Human Services. So I don't know why in the world Marshall Watson would ask me to moderate a panel about change when I went to law school at 32 and left my first career, and all I do is change my life. So I don't know what I could possibly tell you about change. This is Oscar Butler. He is a 2019 graduate of DSOL, and he used to be at the DA's office, and he is now with Barnes and Fersten, who I just heard him say is about to go all criminal defense, correct?
All criminal defense.
All right, and next we have Katie Pack. She's an East Tennessee native and two-time graduate of UT. She is clerk for 2 Tennessee Court of Appeals judges and currently clerks for Judge Christy Davis, which I think is amazing. I love Judge Davis. We met her in Knox County. Katie spent about a year in private practice before determining that it was not for her. And in her free time, she teaches legal writing courses here at LMU and UT. She also says she spends an inordinate amount of time thinking about what's for lunch, and I find that very relatable.
Very true.
Sanjay Raman is an associate attorney at Butler, Barnes and Babb. He handles cases primarily in the area of healthcare liability and medical malpractice and personal injury. Prior to that position, he spent 2 years working in family law and estate planning. And when he's not working, he enjoys taking spin classes with his wife and spoiling his 2 golden retrievers. Lastly, we have Mariel Bough. She's a 2020 graduate of UT Law. She practiced civil litigation as an associate at Quist, Fitzpatrick, and Jared for the first 2 years and made a transition to data privacy counsel with VeraSafe last fall. She and her husband recently moved to South Knox, and they are loving having more room for their 2 dogs to play. So apparently we have a lot of dog lovers on the panel. They're good with adapting to change. All right, so I think we'll get right into it because we don't have a whole lot of time. But we got some 2 really great questions from LMU students, so I think we're going to start with those so that we make sure we don't miss them. So for whoever wants to start, let's start with you, since you're closest to me.
Thank you.
Are you practicing in the field you went to law school for?
That's, I guess, kind of a very loud mic. That's an interesting question. I would say maybe. I think in law school, depending on what year you are, you kind of realize that you don't necessarily focus on or specialize on anything. I always wanted to do criminal work. Never wanted to be a prosecutor, but ended up doing that. And so I obviously took criminal classes here. And so I would say that's a maybe.
Anybody else?
I didn't come to law school with a particular focus or area in mind. Unlike Oscar, I knew I did not want to do criminal, but always kind of thought I wanted to do transactional work, which I'm not doing. So I guess no is the short answer, but I enjoy it. So
I think for a lot of people, I'm sorry, just stop.
Sarah, can I throw my 2 cents in?
Yeah,
I'll just say, if you've been in my class, you know that I went to school thinking I wanted to practice family law, and I really hated it. So no, I did not go to, or I don't practice in the area that I thought I wanted to be in. So.
And I was the opposite of Katie. I went to law school, and when people asked me what I wanted to practice, I said anything but family law. But I wound up through Andrew McCree in career services in personal injury, and it actually, I think the message for law school, and I think the great part about this question, and Oscar touched on it a little bit, is just be open to things, because what you think you might like, you don't, and what you don't particularly pay any attention to might be what you really end up loving. Because personal injury was not on my radar at all, but I wanted a job where I didn't have to dress in a stuffy suit. I didn't want other people taking credit for my work. I didn't want to do hourly billing, and I did none of those things. I have yet to ever learn how to bill a case, and I'm okay with that. So, you know, I have a job where I can wear Chuck Taylors to work, and if that's not your thing and you want to dress up, then you need to know that on the front end. So All right, next question. How can you assess that an environment is a healthy working environment during the interview process?
I can speak to this one. You gotta pull out your best sleuthing skills, in my opinion. A lot of it can be done before your interview. Get on Facebook. Get on LinkedIn. If you know who your interviewer is gonna be, look at, their employee retention, see if you have any connections with the firm, if you have any connections or even remote connections that you can get to make a connection to the firm with you. Ask those associates what it's like to work there. And then if all you can find is, data, like I said, employee retention, things like that, then that's what you have to work with.
Yeah, I think high associate turnover is probably one of the biggest flags for me.
Sure.
Mhm.
I would agree with that. Obviously, depending on the field you're interested in going in, and potentially the firm that you're looking at. The firm that I'm at now, there's 3 attorneys, me being the third. And so I knew the other 2 pretty decently well. And you better than most people, but also you have to be able to get to know them because as an attorney, the bulk of your time is going to be spent with these other attorneys, bouncing ideas off of each other and spending a bunch of time together. And so if you all just aren't naturally compatible, then there's a great chance that I would say you're probably not going to be happy in your work life experience. So that's definitely something to consider too. If you get in there and the vibes are just off, then you probably need to keep looking.
Yeah, I was going to add to that. Just trust your gut. If someone gives you a weird vibe, they're probably weird.
And I think in interviews too, they say communication is mostly not spoken word, but I think in interviews, it's really important to observe both. If they're talking about how they're a family environment, then they probably have no boundaries.
Yeah, run.
Yeah,
Yeah, the we're a family here is.
that is your
We're not
first
doing that.
signal that there are red flags
You have a
everywhere.
family to go home to at the end of the day. You don't need another one.
I actually will add to that. I was reading something recently that I thought was kind of a good idea to ask during your interview how they would classify somebody as being successful in that role and then unsuccessful in that role. And that gives you kind of an idea of what expectations they'll have of you. And that will kind of shed some light on what the work environment might be and if that's something that you feel like you might be compatible with.
I think that's an excellent point. You may also think I'm crazy. TikTok is a beautiful resource. There are a lot of human resources people on TikTok who will talk to you all about things that are red flags, things that are green flags, things that are positive, things to say, things not to say. And in this economy, I think it's best to go in with your best foot forward and know what you're looking for and what you need to be paying attention to when you're speaking to them, I would say. All right, Oscar, what was the biggest fear you had to overcome when considering changing jobs?
The biggest fear I would say was being okay with being uncomfortable. I spent all of my last semester here as an intern at the DA's office, and then 4 years after that, doing the same thing essentially just in different units. And so I got very comfortable with judges, support staff, clerks, bailiffs, and everybody. Obviously, you have that face recognition, and so the way you operate day to day becomes so used to you and common that it's easy to kind of get stuck in that. Knowing that I was not only going to be leaving the office, but also switching sides, now having to speak directly with clients, quote fees, and all these things that I'd never done, essentially. I would say the biggest fear was just being okay with being uncomfortable. And I'm still very uncomfortable. But day to day, the more you do something, it gets better. And so I think you've got to be okay knowing that everybody that has come before you at some point has also been uncomfortable. And so I would say that was the biggest fear, but you can overcome that fear.
That's great. Sanjay, did you want to say something?
No.
Oh, you touched your microphone. So tag you're in.
What was the question?
What was the biggest fear you had to overcome?
I think for me, in the new job that I'm at now, I was basically starting my whole career over again. I had spent the last 2 years doing family law and estate planning work and had never done any kind of healthcare liability or personal injury. And so kind of what Oscar said was being uncomfortable, but also I'm basically learning several new areas of the law that I have zero experience in. So knowing that I'm going to have a lot of questions and being okay asking for help were kind of the biggest things that I've had to overcome in starting this new job.
Ladies, anything?
Yeah, for me, it was a little bit of the fear of the unknown. I went from a civil litigation firm where I was in court a lot. I was talking to clients directly. I was kind of managing my own practice, and I really loved that. I really liked engaging with judges and with local attorneys down at the courthouse, and I liked the FaceTime and things like that. And then I went to a fully remote position at a global firm where my closest coworker is in Crossville, and outside of that, Atlanta, and then Europe and other countries. And so for me, it was really kind of like losing a little bit fear of like losing those relationships I'd spent 2 years building, and then fear of the unknown of my kind of like longevity here at this firm. What if it doesn't work out? And then I've got to go back and find a civil litigation job and everyone's forgotten about me type of thing. And, you know, it's working out fine so far, obviously, but that was my biggest fear in contemplating my career change.
Yeah, so the first change that I made was going from clerking to a private practice, and I didn't know enough about private practice to be afraid, which in hindsight was really stupid. And then when I went from private practice back to clerking, I was going back to my comfort zone and what I liked, which turned out to be appellate litigation. So that wasn't that wasn't really a difficult transition. The hard part for me was I'm a huge people pleaser, so quitting was really hard, and having those conversations after being somewhere for a year, because I think some of the culture is, well, we've invested all this time and money in you, and you're leaving. And those are hard questions to answer. So that was really hard for me, just me personally. So
Katie, I liked your answer to the last question. So if you'll start us off on this question. What advice would you give to students who are trying to figure out what kind of law to practice?
I think what you said earlier about just being open-minded is really important to keep in mind. There's so many areas of the law, and there's so many things that you don't even know that they exist yet. So just don't be too wedded to one idea, and just be open to trying different things. Even if you're in a position and or you're not sure whether it's something that you want to do forever, whatever you're doing, just work really hard at it to keep doors open for you, and make sure you're building that reputation up. But yeah, just stay open-minded.
I would agree with that. I think Katie's 100% correct. One, you've got to consider, as a student, you have the opportunity, most of you are going to have the opportunity to get a ton of experience, because there's always going to be firms and places that are looking for students to come work. And so my advice to law students and even new attorneys who are potentially on their own, get as much experience while you can now before you get somewhere and you're settled in your career. And obviously, as a student, most of the places are not going to be paying you. And so we understand that. But I think I had 3 different internships before my last year of law school. And so one was in a family law firm. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Knew I wanted no part of family law.
Oscar's smarter than me.
I've never wanted to do anything civil. And so being in that firm, stepping into some civil related things, I at least knew, okay, I've done this, I've seen what it's like, and I can now confirm that I don't want to do that. But if you stay in that box, in that bubble, and it's okay to think this is what I want to do forever, but if you can get other experience in other areas, I think that's the best thing that you can do.
I would just add too, I don't know that many people who knew exactly what they wanted to do in law school and they're doing it and they really like it. I know more people who thought they wanted to do something and they tried it and they hated it, and now they're doing something that they never had thought of or heard of before. So yeah.
Yeah, I'll add to Katie's point about just keeping doors open for you whenever you're in a certain practice that maybe you don't see as being like your ideal practice. I wasn't aware that I was really passionate about data privacy until I took a privacy seminar in law school. It's one of those things that you like going into law school, you don't even know that exists. Like, you know that Facebook knows everything about you, but like you don't really know why or what you can do about it. And so like I said, my privacy seminar really kind of opened my eyes to my passion, like I said, for data privacy. And it just so happened that by keeping my network kind of alive, I had a connection at the firm that I'm with now. And they happened to be hiring right around the time that I was looking to do something different in my career. And so that was, I mean, I became interested in data privacy in school, and I'm doing this now. So maybe I'm the only one that Katie knows, but but yeah, just keep the doors open, because definitely when I went into law school, I had no idea that this existed, nor that I would care so much about it. So
I would add to every single, I loved every single answer that we got, but also you don't even have to be as committed as a clerkship, even for a semester. If there's an area that you're interested in, pick up the phone and call an attorney. Because it'll speak volumes to them that you're willing to pick up the phone and make an actual phone call. Because apparently that's rare nowadays. But also just take the initiative. Say, can I buy you a drink? Can I buy you a cup of coffee? Can I take you to lunch? Please tell me about your practice. But you can also roll up on the courthouse one day and sit in criminal court or civil court and listen to hearings, and you can see what they're doing in their actual day-to-day practice and think, is this something that I want to do? Do I want to stand up in front of other people and potentially be really embarrassed when the judge yells at me? Because those things are going to happen. But also I would like to say your extracurriculars speak volumes as well. One of the things apparently, which oddly enough really appealed to Department of Human Services about me, was that I had written a Dept article for 5 years for the Knoxville Bar Association. So be sure that you're participating in things that are interesting to you and that you enjoy, because you never know, especially like for Katie doing appellate work, when your writing skills are going to come in handy and be noticed. All right, what led you to want to change jobs, and what were signs that you saw in your previous job that prompted you to want to change? And we're not asking you to out your former employers.
Who wrote this question?
That was a triple person question, so.
Oh man, I was the only one that didn't want to talk about it.
You are.
We were just having a conversation about how to answer this question, you know, politically.
This was not my question. I can assure you.
It was not your question, that's correct.
I'll jump in since it wasn't my question.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
We appreciate you, Mariel.
Yeah, so like I kind of alluded to earlier, I really liked my old job. I liked everything about it, except it became, man, the compensation, really. The structure of it was no longer sustainable for me. And as Katie was kind of saying earlier, like I didn't want to leave. Like it was really hard for me to like have those conversations. So I started by saying, hey, this isn't working for me. What can you guys do about it? And I was met with no options. So that kind of spoke about the nature of the firm to me, in that they've invested 2+ years in training me into exactly the associate that they want. And they're not willing to help me on the compensation side. And so I started looking for something else.
I think that's a great answer, though. For one, it's an honest answer. And a lot of people seem to be very hesitant to say that, you know, this wasn't working for me financially. And the reality of the practice of law is, unless you have some financial background where you're just wealthy and or you win the lottery, you have to be able to eat. And so just talking about the experiences as a whole, that's one reason why you can't just bog yourself down. You might decide you want to get out and be some big time lawyer in a specific field. And then you get out and you realize that ramen noodles and hot dogs get kind of old pretty quick. And so you have to do something different. And so I think I think a lot of people find themselves in that situation. Me specifically, being a prosecutor for 4 years and then leaving, everybody naturally assumes that it was financial. You know, like, well, you know, you're gonna make the big bucks. And now, yes, more money does not hurt. That's the reality. But I was looking for a much better work-life balance. As a prosecutor, I would handle anywhere from 10 to 30 cases a day. I've been doing that for basically better part of 4 years. Now I have the ability to devote much more time to specific cases and then therefore provide better representation. Loved my job as a prosecutor. Loved it working with the community, working with law enforcement, being able to speak on behalf of victims. Thoroughly enjoyed all of that. And now I'm thoroughly enjoying directly representing clients in the community. So the work-life balance was important to me, and obviously more money never hurts.
I'm happy to take the hit on this question because I was one of the ones who submitted this question. And also we had a speaker who was supposed to be here who was sick, which is part of why I'm running my mouth too. So I'm not just trying to hog the microphone. I want to make sure y'all get good answers, and a variety of answers. And speaking for myself and having a little bit more years of practice under my belt, for me, it was burnout. I was really, really tired. And I was really, really tired of doing the same thing over and over again, because you can kind of get to a point of familiarity in your practice where you know what's going to happen. And sometimes you can tell the client that over and over and over again, and they think they are different. So for me, I really needed something new to do. I like being challenged, but also I'm a person who accepts reality, and I did not have my name on the door, and so I was not the one making decisions. And some of those decisions I didn't agree with. And I am not the type of personality that can accept edicts and just go along with them. So it wasn't even necessarily that I didn't like the person that I worked for or that I had a serious problem with them. It was just their firm and they could do it how they wanted to, and I didn't want to do it that way anymore. So you have to remember that you do have agency in your professional life, and you do have the right to make a change if you want to find that work-life balance, to find that better pay so that you can do what you want to do when you are not practicing law. So.
I will say, I was at a firm that switched management. So we had a new managing attorney come in, and I think this kind of goes back to, Oscar may have said kind of during the interview process, you can feel people out and see if you all are going to be compatible because you're going to be spending a lot of time with them. And I think biggest thing for me was the new person coming in, we clearly just were not compatible. And so I didn't entirely dislike the area of family law and may still be doing it had that change not occurred. But saw that as an opportunity to kind of reevaluate where I was at and decide, is this what I want to be doing long term? Is this where I want to be? And ultimately decided I wanted to try to find something where I was A, more compatible with the attorneys working there, and then B, had more opportunity for long-term growth. And so kind of prioritize that in looking for a new job.
Thank you. Let's talk a little bit now, and we may focus on Mariel since it was her question first. What steps did you take or decisions did you have to make to reach your current role?
I'm gonna double back on my previous answer, and it's all about networking for me, like keeping the opportunity, and this has been true my whole life, even in my prior roles before law school. Keep all the opportunities open. Don't shut a door on any opportunity unless you know on the front end, like for me, no criminal law, no family law. Like I didn't have the stomach or the patience, quite honestly, for family law. And, so I knew that about myself. But any other, like in the future, if data privacy is not working out for me, I know that I've still got some connections in the civil litigation world and I could go back. You just never really know where life's going to take you. And so, yeah, I kept all the networking doors open.
That's excellent. I think that's brilliant. Anybody else? The question was, sorry, that was not the question. What steps did you take to reach your current role, or decisions did you have to make?
Yeah, I'll just note that I've never gotten a job through any sort of formal application process. Every job I've ever had in the legal industry has come through people that I've known and that I've worked with and have been willing to make a phone call for me and recommend me for something. So yeah, definitely. Even if you know you're not going to be where you are forever and you know in your heart that you're not invested in it, it's still really important to put your best foot forward and keep those connections open.
I just want to add something. It doesn't matter if it's a remote connection, like, because I'm speaking on this panel to you, if you connect with me on LinkedIn and you see that I'm connected to somebody you want to work for, a future employer, reach out to me and say, hey, remember that one time you spoke on a panel? I see you're connected to so-and-so. Could you make an introduction? Like it can be that remote, you know what I'm saying?
And for all you introverts out there who are like, this sounds terrible, I see you, I understand, but we wouldn't say it to you if it weren't true. So it's just a big part of the industry.
Also, this school keeps asking me back time and time again to speak, and I don't know why, because I'm the most honest person that I know. But there are two things that I always say when I'm at LMU or anywhere speaking about the law, and one of the two is be nice to your classmates. They are who you are going to be practicing with for the rest of your career.
Mhm.
And I got this job because one of my classmates, I was in the smallest class from LMU, by the way, so we had to be really close. The way I found out about DHS was a former classmate of mine called me and said, hey, we've got this opening. I think you would be really great.
Mhm.
So don't forget that your classmates are also your connections, your professors are your connections, organizations that you belong to are your connections. It's not just people that you have worked for. All right, how have your career goals changed over time?
I'll answer this one. So as you guys know, I thought that I was going to practice family law and have my own firm and be a partner and all of the things. And I quickly discovered that that life is not for me. I don't want to be out there hustling clients, collecting bills, worrying from month to month about whether I'm bringing enough business in. That's not my jam. And I didn't have anyone in my life to have that conversation with me when I was in law school about, hey, you have to be good at the law, but you also have to be a really savvy business person and a really savvy bill collector. So that was a rude awakening for me. And I think I got off track, but
You did, but go ahead.
my career goals just changed when I realized that's a big piece of this, and I really am not interested in that, and I'm not good at it. So, not the law, the bill collecting part.
What's interesting is, like, as I stated, I always wanted to be a criminal defense attorney. And part of that was thinking that I would have my own firm and be kind of doing my own thing. Part of that is also because being here, you're naturally kind of expecting, you're not going to have all the opportunities that some of the larger schools will have. Now, obviously, there's a ton more opportunities as the school continues to grow and become more prestigious. But being a prosecutor here specifically in Knox County, our boss was the highest ranking law enforcement officer of the county. So I am nowhere near ever having my name on anything. I'm in fact working with 40 other prosecutors, 40 support staff, all to represent the state of Tennessee. And so I would say that my long-term career goals necessarily didn't change, but they were definitely put on hold, and I was okay with that. And so I think there are potentially times where your goals might not change, but you have to understand that there's potentially just a process to get there.
Great answer.
Now I'm much closer to reaching that goal, being a small firm where potential partners at some point are going to be leaving, giving me the opportunity to prove my work to the firm and that kind of thing. So I wouldn't say they changed, but they might be on hold for a moment.
Or it might be a longer process than you
Absolutely.
originally expected.
Mhm.
Sanjay, anything?
I think kind of to piggyback off of what Oscar said, I've had a goal of kind of finding a place that could be a long-term position for me and somewhere that values the work that you put in and kind of see a more or less a reward for that work that you're putting in. If you're working somewhere 10 hours a day, 5 days a week, and they're just expecting that of you and you're not getting anything in return, you're going to get burnt out after a short period of time. And so finding someplace that values you but also has some balance has always been something that I've been striving to find. And so I've had a few different jobs that have not quite been that, but it's a process to find that. And I think the goals haven't changed, like Oscar said, but getting there is proving to be a little bit trickier than I originally thought. So
I have to say something. This has nothing to do with this panel, but if I don't say it, it'll bug me.
That's my favorite Oscar.
When Sanjay, I graduated a year before you.
Yeah.
Okay, so when I was, I guess, a 3L, Sanjay and I served on an organization together, and I remember trying to get Sanjay to talk and talk and talk, and Sanjay would never do it. And so I am so glad to see it's about change. I'm so glad.
I'm one of those introverted people that we were just talking
Yeah.
about, so.
Don't want to know.
But here we are, and so I had to say that.
I just want to add to that. I think it's okay if you don't know what your goals are. For me, it's more like process of elimination. Okay, I know I don't want to run my own firm. That's not appealing to me. I don't really know what the end game is, but again, as long as you're happy in what you're doing and you've found something that you can commit to and you're giving it your all for the time being, I think it's okay for your goals to change and evolve over time.
And it's okay for your professional goals to come out of what your personal goals are,
Which will change a lot.
which will change a lot because it does not take very long for you to know that work-life balance is very important.
Mhm.
And other people's work-life balance may not be the same as your work-life balance.
Mhm.
So I think there's a lot to be said for Oscar and Sanjay talking about having long-term goals and learning to be more patient with those goals. But I think it's also perfectly acceptable to know what life you want to live and then backtracking to figure out how you're going to get there. Because our careers are not our entire personhood. I know we like to think that they are, but
I think that's important to say to law students though, because I think that's a real problem in this industry.
I agree.
That confusion between your whole identity and your job.
And two, I can add to that. Sorry to cut you off. Working here, the local bar is small but large, and so you see a lot of the same people over and over again. And there you have the ability, if you're not careful and you don't understand the work-life balance, you will be practicing forever and ever and ever. And at some point, there will be a time where you should take a step back and say, okay, what is that balance? You know, am I happy? Am I healthy? Obviously, you have the ability to potentially make a lot of money in this business, but you still have to work to make that money. And so, if you're just working your life away, when you look back on your career, are you going to be satisfied with what your career was like? And I think Katie's 100% correct. Law students seem to have this unrealistic expectation of that when I get out there, you know, every moment of my life is going to be about practicing law. And it can be if you allow it to do that.
Very
but
easily.
It should
Very
not.
easily.
It should not, and it cannot, because your health is going to be most important. Your personal life should be second most important, and then your profession can gladly come behind that and bolster all the other two.
Mariel, did you?
Yeah. Just to build on that, I wanted to just say ditto, but then.
Sorry.
No, to build on that, and also the point that was brought up earlier about how your professional goals can build or stem from your personal goals. I was one of those people, or maybe I'm the only person that did this, that had just an arbitrary professional goal. I just wanted to be a C-suite executive. Didn't matter what company, like that was just like my goal when I was starting law school or whatever, long term, right? Like I wanted to practice law and get all the experience and then go work in-house somewhere. It didn't have to be in-house counsel or whatever. But being in private practice for 2 years, I realized that you do have to like eat, breathe, sleep. You don't have to, right? But that's the nature.
That's the expectation.
That's what we're
Yeah.
trying not to do, but that's what I wound up doing because I was, you know, recently married, young. I don't have any kids. Like I thought it was fun practicing law, and so I spent all my time doing that. And then now working remotely, I can feel my personal goals kind of starting to take more of like a precedence over my professional goals. Also, every C-suite executive I know is stressed to the max, and I'm just not sure that I want like seeing that like outcome. I'm not sure that that's what I'm really wanting anymore. But at some point I do want to have a family, and not that I want that anytime soon or anything, but you know, like things change over time and things happen that you wouldn't even expect sitting where you are today, that will shift your personal goals so that your professional goals then change as well. So back to stay open-minded. There's some themes occurring here.
So we've already touched on this a little bit, so I think I'll hit this one now. What is your career end goal, and how does your current role or trajectory play into achieving this goal? So we've talked, Oscar's talked a little bit about that. Sanjay's talked, well, everybody's talked a little bit about that. But even if we're in the trenches, even if we're in jobs that we no longer like, how can that still help us contribute to our end goal, whatever that end goal may be? Or how can we fashion the job we have now to go to the end goal?
I would say that, and it circles back to what we've talked about a lot, is the experience. Everything you're doing legally is legal experience. And so you will be surprised, even if you're working in a specific sector, how many times you get asked questions about things that you're maybe not specifically doing. But if you've got that wide range of experience, you either have the ability to point them in a specific direction, or you could potentially point them to a specific attorney. And you know that you can give enough potential background information to lead them in the right direction. And most of the time when you're getting these questions, these people are coming to you and they just have no idea what's going on. And that's why usually the questions are phrased in a way that just doesn't make sense. It's because they don't understand, they don't have the knowledge that you do. And so whatever your end goal is, if there's things that you're having to do or places that you find yourself in between, I think you just have to understand and accept that the experience is what is important. Now, obviously, I'm not saying stay somewhere that you're just miserable at, but know that everything that you're doing should be helpful and having some potential productivity in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this kind of just goes back to reputation. No matter where you are or what you're doing, if people know that you're a hard worker and that you're good to work with, there are going to be doors open to you. So even if you don't know what you're doing long term, which we've established, I fall into that category, just work hard at what you're doing in the moment and things I think will fall into place for you. That's been my experience.
Yeah, just going based off of what's already been said, just in personal experience, when I interviewed for the job I'm at now, I was probably severely underqualified. But I just tried to reiterate to them, yeah, I may not substantively know these areas of the law, but have I taken a deposition before? Yes. Have I been to a motion hearing before? Yes. So you may be in a job that you don't like, but the skills that you're learning in that job are going to be transferable and just help you get to what that end goal is, whatever that may be.
I'd add to that and just encourage everyone to be patient. I decided that I wanted to start feeling like putting out feelers for a different job in December of 2021, I guess. I interviewed with the company that I'm at now in January, that January, and then they tabled my application because they did a bunch of hiring, and then they were like, we like you, but we're done hiring for now. And they came back around in September of 2022 and decided to hire me. Interestingly, after I had just accepted another offer at a litigation firm, but you know, it wasn't too permanent. But I did a lot of interviewing in between those months, right? January and September, and I pitched my marketable skills. I had done depositions, this and that, and I applied for a lot of positions that were narrow subsets of civil litigation that I wasn't necessarily qualified for, that I received offers, and I wound up deciding that the culture wasn't right for me. So be patient and don't jump on an opportunity just because it's all you've got right now or something like that. You know, don't stay somewhere because you're miserable, but also, like, if it's not that bad, ride it out until you can find something that is more in line with your end goal, whatever that is.
Also, I think going back to the themes of the panel that we've established so far, network, reputation, network, reputation.
Are you guys tired of hearing those words yet?
when I was ready to not be in personal injury anymore, the first person I went to was a defense attorney, a civil defense attorney who I worked on 1,001 cases with. Because we had gotten really close over 7 years, because that's who you talk to. You don't talk to other personal injury attorneys. So when I wanted a different job, he was like, absolutely, you would be amazing at this job. I will write you letters. I will talk to people. And then it turns out that the person who calls him to do my character check was somebody that he had been in law school with at UT. And so that made it extra special to the people hiring, that they were like, oh, we know this person. He's awesome. So if he's going to refer somebody, they're also awesome. So again, be nice to everybody, even if you hate their guts, you never know when they're gonna be. And this person I do not hate, I absolutely love him, but always be nice to people, because you never know when you're gonna need them one day.
So hard in law school to be nice to them.
Well, and we're in
Such a high pressure, people aren't themselves in law.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really like some of my classmates now. I was like,
Yeah.
you're a major
Same.
Well, and our
piece
whole
of
job
work.
is conflict, so we think that we have to be mean to resolve conflict, and that's not really how the world has to work. So so that we know that jobs that we don't love are not completely wasted, what are lessons or knowledge that you took from your old position into these jobs?
I think one thing that the professors here kind of instilled in us very early was that it's very important to be nice to the staff, right? The help, the court clerks, the bailiffs. And as a prosecutor, obviously seeing those people every day, you naturally begin to chat with them and become close with them. But now that I have not only left DA's office, but gone into private practice, I'm doing a lot more traveling to other counties. And every county I've been to over the past 3 weeks, I've had to go in to the clerk and say, hi, my name is Oscar. And before we get started, I have no idea what I am doing here. So if you don't mind to point me in the direction of where I can grab my warrant and where I might find my client, that would be very helpful. But I think once you get more comfortable with, again, being uncomfortable and being okay to say that, hey, I don't know what I'm doing. And the vast majority of the other attorneys in the courtroom potentially don't know what they're doing either. That's why we call it practice, right? We're all figuring it out together. But I think so long as you're okay knowing that at some point you're going to have help and being open to that help, I think that's.
I think one good thing I learned in private practice was just not to take things personally, whether it's really harsh feedback or, whatever it is. Everyone is just going all the time. And most of the time people, if someone treats you a certain way or whatever, it's not personal. And I think that was an important lesson for me. And I think I learned how to make decisions better, because you guys can comment on this too. Private practice is a constant series of small decisions where you've looked into it and you think you know what you want to do, and you just have to make a decision really quickly and be confident about that. And that was one of the hardest things, I think, for me, but it was a good thing to learn.
Yeah, as much as I didn't get along too well at my previous job, it was a much slower environment, so it was a good space to learn how to do billing and deal with difficult clients, make split-second decisions, all those kinds of things. And so while I dumped all my family law knowledge as soon as I left there, a lot of those skills have been super useful in a more fast-paced, high-volume firm. And so substantively, I'm not using my family law knowledge anymore, but all those skills that I learned in the cases I was handling have certainly helped me have a head start at this new job.
I think for me, one of the basic skills I learned, and other people probably learned this at a much earlier age than me, but is to pay attention to other people's communication styles. So I was told before I interviewed with my civil litigation firm that the guy who was interviewing me is a good old boy, does talking on the phone, hates email, doesn't own a cell phone. He wants FaceTime or for you to pick up the phone and call in. And I use that skill all the time, especially with a remote company where people have all different types of communication styles. if you can identify it from the get-go, you will eliminate any not possibility of miscommunication, but you will greatly reduce the amount of miscommunications and like possible, fireable events, honestly, in a remote company. But all that to say, it might not be applicable for everyone in person. It's even more important. So yeah, pay attention to people's communication styles.
And I'll add one more thing that I think we kind of take for granted that I had to kind of hone in on is that you're dealing with people. And I think you've always got to realize that, especially if you're dealing with a specific client as opposed to like an organization or transactional thing, that you're dealing with a human being. And sometimes as attorneys, I think it's easy for us to sit back on our high horse and just get caught up in the fact that we have a file, but there is a name on that file. And I think that name and that person is important. It's easy to kind of get caught up in that. So I think it's important to remember that you're dealing with people, you're dealing with people's feelings, and more importantly, you're dealing with people's lives. And so I think that's something that should be taken in great consideration.
And I think adding on to that, don't forget that your client is your best opportunity for knowing your case. Your client has most of the answers to your legal problem in their case, so don't be afraid to talk to them. They know what happened in their wreck. They know what happened in their marriage. They know what happened with data. They know these things. So talk to them. We are not better than they are just because we have letters behind our names.
Absolutely.
And you have to know that not just that they have feelings, but also that they are not idiots.
Yep.
All right, so I think we'll just do a couple more questions before we wrap this up. But can you talk a little bit about how your current job or your past job aligned with your personal values and how that plays into your day-to-day life?
I don't think my job is appropriate to discuss values. But I can say it was interesting. Again, never wanted to be a prosecutor. And so always had the thought of criminal defense and defense work, period. And so when I got the opportunity to go intern, I remember coming to talk to Dean Reed and saying, hey, I've got this opportunity to be a prosecutor. And obviously, if you know Dean Reed, you know that she's a career prosecutor. And so she was like, heck yeah. And I was like, I want to do this. And one thing that she kind of made me aware of was sometimes it's the things that you don't want to do makes you the best person for that job, right? And so she believed that I would have potentially the best mindset to be a prosecutor because she would know that I would understand coming from the defense side that we're dealing with people's lives, especially when you're talking about their freedom. And so now, after having been a prosecutor for 4 years, where I have this obligation to do my best to protect the community and uphold the Constitution, I'm now flipping sides and representing those exact people that at some point I was prosecuting. And so the value aspect of it is not necessarily, I say it's not relevant. There are cases that I'm simply just not going to handle. But it's the understanding that we still have an obligation to hold the state to their burden. And so that's the way I look at it. And I go in reality, if somebody did something, it doesn't matter. What's important is that the state has alleged that they have done something. And it's our job to make sure that whatever the state is alleging is accurate, and two, that the state can prove that.
Yeah, we've talked about this a lot already, but I think as you get out of school and as a few years go by, sometimes your personal life changes a lot. And the job that I'm in now just really allows for that balance. And instead of making 100 small decisions every single day and like laying awake at night, hoping that everything is okay, we work really in depth on one case for 2 or 3 weeks, and we work as a team to figure out the answer. And it's just a little bit of a slower pace, and I just do have that balance that I realized that was important to me. So yeah.
I am making 100 small decisions every day. But there's a really strong emphasis, like we talked about, on work-life balance at this firm. I've met all the attorneys' families, which is huge. And just we all can work when we need to and then leave it at the door for the most part. I'm not working a ton of late nights or weekends or anything crazy like that. Occasionally I'll have to, but just knowing that there is a boundary there that they don't want to cross into your personal life as much as possible, I really appreciate. And so that aligns with kind of what I was looking for in a new position.
Yeah, I didn't know if we were allowed to say that we didn't want to work on the weekends, but that's what I was trying to
Get
hit
your
at. Yeah.
microphone, Katie.
I'll speak a little bit about diversity, which is something that became increasingly important to me when I got out into practice and realized that there's like 5% women in general, and like, I don't know, there's just really not a lot of diversity in Knoxville. This is actually a very diverse panel. I'm looking at it, but so anyway, where was I going with this? Oh, at VeraSafe, it's a global firm. And so we've got so much diversity. We have a South African team that we interface with every day. I think it's 50% or more women team members. And then everybody is just so culturally diverse. It's like a breath of fresh air from my previous experience in lots of dog Knoxville. I don't
No, I
want
think
to,
that's true.
I'm like, I don't want to
No,
like,
it's true.
but my previous experience did lend me to start to want to do something about that. And so like little shameless plug for the Barristers Diversity Committee here. I got involved and I'm co-chair of that committee. And so if that's something that aligns with your values and you can't necessarily do anything about it in your practice, although I squawked about it a lot at my old firm, if you really don't have much of an ability to change hiring practice or something like that, get involved in your local community, like the Bar Association.
All right, last question. This is your chance to say what you need to say. What is something you wish you had known when you were in law school? And I'm happy to start this answer actually, because this is my number 2 thing that I always say when I am at LMU, and that is a plug for mental health and a plug for good mental health. Make sure you are your best possible self when you are going to be a lawyer, because everything that is not great about you right now is going to be exacerbated when you are under the stress of 100 files. So if you are a drinker, you're going to drink more. If you like drugs, you're going to like drugs more. If you hate yourself, you're going to hate yourself more. So
Really hurt it.
go to therapy, read the self-help book, do whatever you need to do to get right with yourself, and to get yourself on the best path to success. Because otherwise, the practice of law is going to be very tortuous.
I would agree 100%. I would say I wish I would have known to not take myself so serious. As a law student, I feel like there's so much pressure on what you're going to do afterwards. So much pressure on making sure that you're succeeding day to day. And then, right, you're going to be a lawyer. You're going to be this big, bad adversarial lawyer. Except for when you come over to the city county building, you realize that there's no really adversarial thing going on. Most of it is agreements, and we're kind of hee-hawing in the back hall, right? So, and that's the reality. But if you don't know that, if you don't have that experience, then you're going in thinking, well, I've got to put on this persona and I've got to be this real serious person. And I was pretty serious in law school for the most part. And now looking back, I'm just like, I was probably that guy that Mariel would think was a real piece of work. Right? And there's no reason for that. It's been mentioned a couple of times. You would be surprised how many of your colleagues, your students now, that you're going to have to rely on when you get out in practice. You're going to see them. The counties I've been to, I've seen other students that we graduated with that have helped me even get me through security without having to stand in the daggone line, right? Because I'm an attorney. Little things that you just don't think about to where the people around you are going to have to step in and help you. And so if you've just done nothing but hold yourself in this high regard the whole time, they're going to be a lot less willing to help you. And that doesn't help you or your client or your profession. And so I would say, don't take yourself so serious. It's okay to laugh and have fun and take some moments to just kind of enjoy the process.
Yeah. Being in private practice, whether you're going out on your own or your goal is to eventually be a partner, you're also, and I think first and foremost, a business person. So you have to market yourself, you have to bring in business, you have to be an accountant, a bill collector, all of those things I've already said. If you have no interest in doing that, start thinking about what alternatives there are and looking at government positions, nonprofit, all of the other options that are available to you, and they are out there. You have to look for them a little bit more. But yeah, don't forget that first and foremost, this is a business.
I think the thing I wish I had understood a little bit better was, I mean, the whole theme of this panel is it's okay to be uncomfortable and it's okay to change. Just because you're in something and it's easier to stay and do it because it's comfortable doesn't mean that it's the best thing for you personally or career-wise. And so if you have to take a step back and reevaluate where you're at, even if it's 10, 15 years down the road in your career, which I'm not there, but I've seen people do, that's okay. And it's going to be fine. And you might be a little uncomfortable at first, but you'll figure it out.
I think I wish that I could tell myself back when I was a 1L that law school is not everything. It's kind of like when you're in high school and you know those classmates in high school that were like, high school is the end all be all, best time of your life, whatever. But like, law school is all consuming, and I wish I could tell myself that there's life outside of law school. There's so much life outside of law school. It's just 3 years, but I feel like it just has this ability to kind of make you feel trapped for those entire 3 years. And so I'd encourage you to get out there, and especially if you're trying to stay in Knoxville and build your own practice or go into a firm here, network, get out into KVA has a bajillion free events for law students. Go to the first one, and if you don't know anyone, make a friend, and then you'll know more people at the next one. But yeah, try to get out of your own head while you're in law school. I feel like that's bad advice.
No, I thought that was good advice because it's easy to take that mentality of grinding in law school and carry that directly into your career. And so if you can break that habit now, then you won't get out into your career and burn out after a few years because you have been grinding since day one of law school. So
just to clarify, I'm not saying not to work hard. I'm saying there's more to life in law school.
All right, any questions? All right, yeah.
When you were new attorneys, did you ever have imposter syndrome? If you did, how did you get that?
Literally every day. Yeah, still. So
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm still an imposter. I told somebody this morning in the back hall, they walked by and they said, "Oscar, why are you acting like a defense attorney?" I said, "Well, I was told you're supposed to fake it till you make it." And that's the reality. And I think it was Professor Beckman who instilled in me that it's called the practice of law for a reason. We all really are truly figuring it out as we go. And that's why the law changes, all right? Because as time goes on, as technology changes, things change and adapt too. And so it's not necessarily imposter syndrome. It is just literally every attorney in the world.
I don't know that it ever goes away though.
No.
yeah. But I also think, we all know those attorneys who know everything and they don't need to research and they don't need to ask for help. Those people should be avoided at all costs. Nobody truly knows what they're doing all of the time. So I think, the fake it till you make it thing is important. Like you have to have confidence in yourself, but nobody knows what they're doing all of the time. We're all just trying to figure it out and make it work. So, and I work for a lot of judges and they're just trying to figure it out and make it work too. So I don't know if I'm supposed to say that, but like we're all humans. And I think once you learn that, the imposter syndrome becomes manageable.
But I think also, like Oscar said, don't take yourself too seriously. You're going to screw up. You're going to say the wrong thing. You're going to do the wrong thing. And as long as you walk out of that situation contemplating in your head, what did I learn from this situation? You're going to be fine. Because I don't know any lawyer who's been practicing for a year or 30 years who does not still screw up. It's gonna happen.
I'll just say to add on what Katie said, those attorneys who,
Know everything.
yeah, know everything and don't read the law, those are the attorneys who will miss a change in the law because they didn't stay up to date on it. And you doing your work and being diligent can use that to your advantage in some instances. Like, I think of a time when I had a case against an attorney who had a bar number of like 800. And I was like, there's no way I'm gonna know what I'm doing. But if you just prepare, like, don't let that intimidate you.
Mhm.
Know that you know what you're doing, and that's gonna be good enough.
I can quickly just give a very narrow example of how I dealt with imposter syndrome when I was very first starting and just thrown into the practice of law and expected to take depositions and what even is a deposition and what are the rules of a deposition. Prepare, of course, like Sanjay and everyone else has said, be the most prepared person, but then on the day of the deposition, I would wake up and play like the most like pump up playlist. And then just like look at myself and be like, I can do this. Like, I'm prepared. I graduated law school. I have a degree and I know my client. I know my case. I know the opposing's case. You know, you just kind of got to talk yourself up and then get it done.
I would also say, and I don't know if this has anything to do with imposter syndrome, but don't always listen to what everybody else says about somebody in the practice of law. There is a judge who plaintiff's attorneys notoriously dislike, and that judge was never, ever anything but wonderful to me. Professionally, in the courtroom, out of the courtroom. And this judge even went so far as to go out of their way to help me one time. So form opinions for yourself. Don't let somebody else tell you. Now that we sat here for an hour, don't let somebody else tell you how to practice. Really figure it out for yourself. And
Ignore everything we just said.
yeah, do everything with an open mind and meet everyone with an open mind. Anybody else?